This is Kathy from Gadget Stop 321, and today I'm going to be taking a look at four of the inks that I have in my collection whose primary purpose is not actually writing in the traditional sense. I don't use these for taking notes or writing in my journal or writing letters or anything like that. I've never been one who used highlighters a lot, even when I was a student. I didn't really use highlighters. I like to circle and box and underline, and I use these inks for those purposes, for marking up my existing notes. And so I wanted to take a look at four inks, and these four inks, except for the yellow, three of these inks I purchased to use for writing, and then they turned out to not really work well for that purpose. So let's take a look. I just have my Lilliput out here. That's what I use to write these notes, and I already had some writing on this page, so I thought I would use that for this sample. But this is just another writing sample with my Kaweco Lilliput and Venta Inks Carlos. I'm really loving that ink. That has been a real surprise how much I liked this dark saturated ink. Okay, now the first ink I'm going to take a look at is this yellow ink, and I had a feeling when I got this I wasn't going to be using this a lot for writing, but I've seen other YouTubers, specifically Wasky Squirrel. He uses yellow ink a lot, and I didn't have a yellow in my collection, and I showed this in my video when I did the writing sample for it. That is just a super saturated yellow. In fact, I had some of this ink in my ink syringe, and I looked at my ink syringe and saw that I had some ink left over in it, and I was thinking that it was a black ink, and when I sucked up some water into it, it was a bright yellow. This is just super saturated. So you can write with it, but this is good for someone like me. I've got just a tiny bit left in my TWSBI Mini. This is good for circling, and you could use it like a highlighter, scribble over some text. If you don't want to, if you're not going to be highlighting a lot, underlining. So I kind of like this as a going back over previously taking notes, just kind of reviewing. It helps me whenever I'm going back over notes that I've taken previously to interact with the text again and do things like this. And another ink that kind of surprised me, you just don't know. Chris Signs always says, get an ink sample. You just don't know until you've tried an ink how it's going to work for you. It's one thing to see it in a video or still pictures, but Iroshizuku Fuyugaki is I got it because I was looking for a reddish orange, and it turns out it's a more of a bright orange, and it's a beautiful color. I love to look at it, but as far as reading back, it's just so bright. Let me zoom out. When you see this much of it on a page, it's just too much. So I think it's another good ink for marking up stuff. Specifically, this would be even better than the yellow for taking additional notes. So I kind of like this one too. That's a nice. This would also be a good one for like when I'm journaling, sometimes I want a little section of what I'm journaling to stand out. Maybe it's a quote or something. Just having a little bit of this on the page. Iroshizuku Fuyugaki. Next, these are two inks that I thought I was going to love them, and I do love the colors, Yuyaki and Chikurin, but they don't work great. They're just a little bit too pale to use for writing. So this one is, let me scoot this up, Yuyaki. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, the first one was Fuyugaki. It's a little bit brighter, and Yuyaki is a little bit more pale. So this one's Yuyaki. You can see if you don't want it standing out quite that much, it's a little bit too pale for writing, but for marking up like that, I really like that. It gets your attention without just being so in your face. And Chikurin is another one. Same thing. A little bit too pale for writing, but you can use it for marking up without it being too obnoxious. So that's just how I use these more pale inks. And it doesn't even have to be a pale ink, just maybe it's too bright of an ink. Another one, I should have gotten this one out. It's kind of a reddish pink, Iroshizuku Momiji. To me, that is a stereotypical paper grading, kind of a red with a hint of pink to it almost. Now that I'm a retired teacher, I just can't bring myself to use that. It makes me think of work and grading papers. But maybe sometime in the future, I'll feel a little more nostalgic about it. It'll remind me of my teacher days. But for now, it's just too much of a paper grading red. So that's something, I might use similar to this, just little bits of it in my writing. All right, if you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.